I'll introduction 2-3 minutes, and then we'll have question answers for 10-15 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Arun, have you read Ashoka Modi's book?
No,
India's
no,
Broken?
no, I have not. Okay.
That interview I did with you and AKB,
Ah.
it should be put up soon enough. They are just,
Sure.
they had this
Yeah.
long Easter weekend, so they're sort of getting their act together.
Okay, okay. Doesn't matter. Few days here and there.
So should we start, or could we wait?
And we can start.
Or maybe we can wait for another 2 minutes. We'll start by 17:05.
So I have a PPT and I'll present that.
Yes, sir.
Sure. There should be no problem.
Somehow my picture starts breaking after a while.
Mine? No. I just went on mute. I just turned off.
No, my picture after a while starts breaking up.
Yes, true. Some issue. We can start, Dharani.
Just 1 second, sir. I'm just starting. Just a second. Just a second. Am I clear?
Yep.
Just give me 10 seconds. Yes, I can start. So, good evening, everyone, to this DPF event on Adani scam and related incidents. After Hindenburg came up with a report by which it claimed that Adani shares are inflated by more than 400-500%, that there seems to be no remark coming from the BJP party. The main concerns about the Adani scam, the first thing is the shell companies. There have been apparently 5 shell companies operating from Mauritius, which seems to have invested about 10,000 to 20,000 crores in various Adani group of companies. And what this has done is, this has kind of increased the shareholding pattern of the promoters in Adani group of companies. So these shell companies is, as per the report, is apparently linked to the Adani family itself. This kind of increases the shareholding pattern of Adani family in these companies to about 90%. So permissive limit as per the act is 75%. So most of the companies, the shareholding pattern is somewhere between actual official shareholding pattern is somewhere between 73% to 74%. But if you include the money that is pumped in from the shell companies, it immediately goes to 90%. That's worry number one. What were the regulators doing? It's the job of the RBI and SEBI to monitor any foreign direct investment coming. As per Hindenburg report, these shell companies do not even seem to have had a website, the LinkedIn does not even show a single employee. So the second concern is the current ratio. Current ratio of most of the Adani companies, except for one, are less than one. What does it mean if it's less than one? If it's less than one, it means that their immediate serviceables, that is all their immediate expenditure, is much higher than what the receivables are. And for some of the companies, it is less than 0.3. Even for one company, it's 0.2, which means that they have 5 times higher expenditure than what they are expected to incur. But still, their multiplier, by which what I mean is the value of the company in terms of their revenue is exponentially higher. And if you compare with the companies in other sectors, the multiples are even 10 times or 5 times smaller than Adani group companies, which is again another concern. So what were the regulators doing? And third concern is the huge amount of land bank which Adani group of companies received from government at an extremely cheaper price. I was told that one such incident was they've gotten about 16,000 acres for less than 1 rupee an acre. And then they further leased out this land to a public sector company. So with this, I open the floor and request Dr. Arun Kumar to go first.
Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me. You have to enable me to screen the share screen. Can you enable me to share the screen?
Archana? So there will be an option for share screen in your computer.
I know, but it says host has disabled participants.
Archana, could you please enable?
Yeah, I've just enabled it. It's enabled now, sir.
No, but somehow that is not coming. Can you see?
So it should work now.
Can you try? Can you try again now?
Can I just like cancel it and then try again now? It should work.
Okay. Can you see the screen now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We can see the screen. Yes, we can.
Okay. 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 So basically, what I'll be doing is I'll be talking about, what the Adani episode means and what its implications for India are. And as an introduction, one of the sharpest rise of a group and equally sharp fall in its valuation is what has brought this into the foresight. And the Hindenburg report has accused the group of massive manipulations, calling it the largest con in corporate history. Valuations of Adani Group companies have became astronomically high, and the Hindenburg says Adani stocks were overvalued by around 85%. Adani's responded by saying that the attack is misconceived, and politically they said that short selling is an attack on India's growth story. The Hindenburg responded by saying that the questions were largely not answered. So we have to decipher where the truth lies. Now, the question is that the share price collapse, does it create a problem for Adani companies? Because Adanis have plenty of assets. But the returns on companies will come only from the assets. Now, as already pointed out, the returns that the companies give are not at all high. And I'll come to that data a little later. So various companies can fail due to incorrect decisions or due to economic downturn. So the question is, what is the difference in Adani's case? And the difference that comes about is that there's a political backing that seems to be underlying the Adani's case. And we have to ask, can criticism of Adani's be anti-national activity, as has been said politically? But it's also said that markets are efficient in the long run, but not in the short run, meaning thereby that the stock market prices that may have come down would adjust over a period of time. The question is that quite correct? Because in the short run, if things start going wrong, then in the long run also they can go wrong, because the short run pushed together becomes the long run. So in other words, all these arguments that it's anti-national activity, that the stock market will adjust and things will turn out to be okay, there are big question marks, and that's why there are certain problems that have to be dealt with. The questions that need to be answered, even if we discount the Hindenburg report, is how have Adanis become so rich so suddenly? Within a few years, their wealth rose by about $100 billion for them to become the second and the third largest, richest person in the world. And how have they managed to acquire assets so quickly? As was pointed out, they have acquired large number of assets all over the place, whether it be airports, ports, and so on and so forth. Then to acquire these assets, what have been the sources of funds that have been tapped? Then another very important question is with regard to the FPO, which was completed on January 31, which is that how did it suddenly get subscribed? And I'll come back to this question, that the price that was ruling in the market was much lower than the FPO price. So how did it get subscribed? Also, as has been pointed out, already the regulatory and investigative agencies, were they playing their part? Were they actually doing what they needed to do? And here there's a question about the SC monitored committee also, whether it would be able to unravel the wider issues or only look at what the SEBI's role was and whether SEBI played the role. So therefore, we have to think about whether a wider committee is required. And all this points to whether there have been signals from the top to facilitate the Adani Group's growth. So these questions can be asked independent of the Hindenburg report that we are all discussing. Now, one of the important things is the pattern of shareholding in the Adani companies. And if you look at the Adani Enterprises Limited, which is the basic company from which other companies were there, then you find that this is the pattern where the public holding in India is very small. Financial institutions in India also have only 4.3%. Mutual funds have 1.2%. And bulk of it is the promoters, Indian and foreign institutions holding a 15.4% and so on. Now, it's quite possible that a part of the holding of others and foreign institutions could also be under the promoter's control, because this is the mechanism that's sometimes used by various businesses, and this needs to be investigated. Now, let's look at some data on the Adani companies. Shorting could not have been done in India, had to be done abroad, and that had to be done out of foreign institutional holding. So Hindenburg has said that it has shorted the US traded bonds and Indian non-Indian derivative instruments. It's not that shorting was done here in India. And I think no entity would have dared to short the Adani stocks in India. And the public holding was just too small for people to start selling and making a big impact. So the question is how the undue high valuations and high risk make it easy to short sell. And that is because if I sell today when the price of the stock is high, and then later on I have to deliver at a much lower price, then I can make a good profit. So that's what Hindenburg and other short sellers do. They sell at a price which is high, which is unduly high, expecting that the share price would drop, and therefore they would be able to make a profit. So this entity, Hindenburg, is not under government control, and that's why it could do it there, but Indian entities could not have dared to do this short selling, even though some profit could have been made out of that. Now, even after the steep decline of the share price from starting January 25, and then some rise in the share price from February 27 to March 8, what you find is the price to earning ratio of ADEL was 112, which means that the return that was giving was roughly around 1%. And the dividend yield was 0.049%. This is the stock market data on March 8th. And the ratio of profit to market capitalization, and this, even though the market capitalization of the Adani Group had halved, that ratio of profit to market capitalization was just 2%. This is much less than, say, the Bajaj Group. Among the large companies, you have the Tatas and the Reliance and the Bajaj Group and Jindal Group, etc. So I looked at some data and I found the Bajaj Group had a return of 3.4%, Jindal Group had 10.8%. So the question is, at the low return that the Adani Group was offering, why were people investing? It's also said that the Adani Group is offering a lot of employment, but I found the amount of employment being offered by the Adani Group is rather small. So therefore, in a sense, whatever we can say about the Adani Group, it's not as if it's providing a lot of employment and so on in the economy. Now, how do companies increase their share price valuation in general? And what you do is you acquire the assets at cheap prices. So then the profitability of the company goes up, and that leads to higher share price valuation. Then you leverage the overvalued assets to raise large loans to acquire more assets. And then the third is that you round trip black money of self and others to invest in the group companies. So these are some of the mechanisms that can be used in general by businesses that are there. Then within the economy, what is done is that you have friendly stockbrokers, managers of mutual funds, etc., and they help prop up their stocks. There is trading going on to boost the stocks, and money is passed on through some unknown entities and some others, so that this kind of trading is not related as related party transactions. The global financial architecture today is such that black money can flow abroad, and then from there it can come. There are 90 tax havens through which this can be done. So you can base yourself in some tax haven and move funds from there. The funds either belong to the owners or to the associates of the owners. So it may not be just the owners themselves, but could be other associates, whether it be the corrupt political money or the corrupt bureaucratic money and so on. That can also be round trip. And for this purpose, shell companies are widely used to do the round tripping of black funds back to the country. Now, the use of shell companies is based on what is called round tripping and layering, so that you cannot track where the money is coming from and whose money it is. So these funds that are brought back, they can be used to actually do trading in the share market and raise the price to earning ratio to 100, 200, etc. So the share price rises and the P ratio becomes very high as a result of that. So the question is, why is anybody investing when at P ratio of 200, the return is 0.5%? Now, when the price to earning ratio becomes very high, then the investigative agencies and the regulatory agencies, they should know that something is not right, and they should investigate the source of the fund and how the manipulation is being done. Now, this is not being done in the case of Mr. Adani, where the price earning ratio in some companies is 100, 200, 400, and so on. Now, capitalism has been synonymous with cronyism, both in India and globally. The Chaibol model in Korea, the Japan Incorporated in Japan, and the case of Enron in US point to that. So there were accusations of corruption in these countries also. We've seen in Korea, the president had to resign. In Japan, the prime ministers had to resign, in the 90s, when all this was being pointed out, that, there was an involvement of the state and the capitalists in there. So what is unusual? The unusual in the Indian case is that in the Adani's case, this happened at a very astounding level. The rapidity with which, the assets were acquired by Mr. Adani, the rapidity with which the share prices went up and the personal wealth of Mr. Adani went up, that was at an astounding level. And because of the cronyism, it enabled borrowing from banks in India. It enabled LIC to invest, even though the mutual funds were not investing in those companies. So this dramatic increase in wealth that has taken place is due to acquisition of assets and the high valuation that I was pointing out too. It's not because, unlike in the case of the USA, where we've seen Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Microsoft and so on, their wealth has grown because of some new technology. or there has been financial sector growth in those companies. And that's why, some of the individuals became super rich, more than $100 billion of wealth, going up to $200, $300 billion. So businesses have been acquired in the case of Mr. Adani, where they had no experience, like in the case of running airports, defense projects, energy, etc. So the high profits that are being generated in some of their companies is because of the oligopolistic and monopolistic position and the manipulation of the regulation. One can gold plate a project to be able to make extra profit. And it's difficult for the regulator to catch such gold plating, or the regulator may look the other way and not, investigate the pricing that is being done. So this happens especially if, there's a political pressure, if there's known to be high connections for these people. Now, the acquisition of cheap assets has been taking place, again, because of closeness to powers. Loans from banks have been enabled, grant of contracts have been there. Wherever the Prime Minister has visited, as was accused in the Parliament, in foreign countries, again, assets were enabled and contracts were enabled. So this crony capitalism is what has enabled all this to happen so quickly. Also, investigation by agencies has not been taking place. One big example of that is the Adani port, through which drugs worth 30,000 crores came, then worth 2,000 crores came. And that was several years back, but nothing has come out of that. So in other words, investigative agencies, investigation of cases relating to Adani's have been very slow. This could also be a result of the political pressure that exists. Now, SEBI and the RBI also needed to have, investigated what was going on. For instance, the Fitch subsidiary last year reported the high gearing ratio that the Adani companies have. And when the gearing ratio is high, the risk of failure is also equally high. So therefore, both the SEBI and RBI should have investigated what was going on in the Adani companies, but that was not done. The FPO subscription, which was completed on January 31, is a case in point. It points to the mechanism that are utilized by the Adanis. When the price in the market was much lower than the FPO price of 3,200, why anybody was investing? And they would be investing only for two reasons. One is that, there was political pressure for rich individuals to invest. And secondly, there would be the own money, which was being round-tripped from abroad, brought into the company. Otherwise, any independent investor would have simply bought the shares in the market rather than subscribing to the FPO, because that would have given them an extra profit. It was also known that the price would keep falling. So why would anybody invest? But then, the thing is that the FPO was withdrawn on the pretext that it was, morally not correct for the FPO to go through and for money to be taken from those companies. But the point is the Adanis needed that money to prepay some of the banks, because as the share prices declined, whatever money they had borrowed, that the pledge that they had done, that was inadequate. So therefore, it was a convenient ploy to say that, we don't go through with the FPO, so that the money that the Adanis had put into the FPO became available. Now, all this is going to have a big impact on the Indian economy, because it's spoiling the investment climate, and because there's a fear that any profitable business could be taken over by some, favored businessmen. So the business climate takes a turn, and that's why high net worth individuals have been leaving the country in large numbers. Recently, the data from the Parliament was that more than 2 lakh people took up foreign, citizenship. Public has lost money in the stock market because as there's panic when the Adani stocks went down, the stock markets also went down. So even though the direct loss was less because the Adani group public holding is small, but the overall loss because of the decline in the stock market becomes larger. And as a result of this kind of problem, the bank lending gets tightened because, there'd be fear of lending to these big companies and so on. There's a
I think there's a problem in the connectivity, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir. I think we lost you. I was not sure if it was my connection.
No, this is, I am Paranjoy speaking, not Dr. Arun Kumar.
Okay. Professor Arun Kumar, can you hear us?
I'll just speak to him. Dharani. He's coming. Sir, we lost you.
He has already left, I think. He's left. I think he'll join back.
Then we can start with Mr. Paranjoy because seems there is some connectivity issue with Professor Arun Kumar. He will join in the meantime.
So then, Paranjoy, I think thank you for joining us. And I think you can go. And before that, there's one more issue which I forgot to mention during my introductory speech. If you look at the domestic institutional investors, 93 to 95% of the investment has come from one institutional investor, that is the LIC. And do you think that would have happened without the Union government saying it? Because even though if it looks, the investment of 30,000 crores or 40,000 crores may appear very small to the size of LIC, but even then, for that much money in a single company, I don't think they have done so in any other company. So if you can also enlighten on that, that will be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Shri Dharanidharan. Thank you for inviting me for this discussion convened by the Dravidian Professionals Forum. Well, Professor Arun Kumar had made an amazing presentation where he's touched on several issues, and he was kind of almost finishing it. There were just a few slides left when the connectivity was disrupted. So let me try and add to what he has said, because he's made a very detailed and a very comprehensive presentation. So I can at best hope to add some points to what he's already highlighted. The first point I want to make, and as we step back a little bit in time, the nexus between business and politics is neither new nor is it unique to India. It exists across the world to a lesser or a greater extent, many countries in the world. So to elaborate on the point that Professor Arun Kumar made, that cronyism is integral to capitalism, I want to make a little bit of a distinction. Cronyism implies, as he has already pointed out, the government tweaks the rules, there is regulatory capture, or the regulators keep quiet, whether it be the Securities and Exchange Board of India or the Reserve Bank of India. And the whole system is geared to benefit one or a few corporate conglomerates. Now, the point is that this is absolutely correct in the case of Adani. And the point that I needed to add is that I think we have moved beyond cronyism, and this is a kind of an oligarchy. The difference is there's actually no difference between the private industrialist and the state, the government. So that really is something, in my opinion, that distinguishes the Adani Group from other business conglomerates in India. Let me move further. So when I said that this is not the first time we are hearing about crony capitalism in the Indian context, but what we've seen is, let me name a few business conglomerates: the Tatas, the Birlas, the Ambanis. You know, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi stayed in the home of Ghanshyam Das Birla, where he was killed on the 30th of January of 1948. And it's worth going back to what Gandhi said about the nexus between politicians and business people. And the Congress had several important industrialists who acted even as the treasurers of the party and played an important role. They were so-called nationalist industrialists or nationalist business persons. We saw over the years the Birlas, the Tatas, and even the Ambanis rise. But let me say here, argue, that never before in the history of India have we seen one particular business conglomerate rise in such a spectacular manner. I mean, 20 years ago, nobody knew who Gautam Adani was. He was just one more diamond trader in Mumbai's Jhaveri Bazaar. His family had a small plastics unit, and the rise was truly spectacular. And much of this rise were more or less coterminous with the time that Mr. Narendra Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat from 2001 till the time then he became the Prime Minister of India in 2014. And over the last 9 years, he has been the Prime Minister of India, roughly 9 years. So his rise has been truly spectacular in this period. It doesn't mean to say that governments of other political persuasions did not help him. You talked about the land bank, acquisition of land at Mundra Port, and several state governments, they have projects over there. And they belong not just to the Congress, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh. Earlier, now it is a BJP ruled state, but the projects were started even before Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, and so on and so forth. Jharkhand may right now not be ruled by the BJP, but Jharkhand has a major project. Anyway, the point I'm making is that his rise was truly spectacular. But what was amazing is the fall. And here his fall was again precipitous and unprecedented. It's not that other companies, haven't seen a sharp dip in the prices of the shares. Reliance once saw that, but never in this scale, where we saw that even after a rise, if you compare the prices of the listed entities in the Adani group and compare that what is happening today, and we are about 2.5 months down the line. The Hindenburg report came out on the 24th of January. We see that about half, it has lost half its market value. Some companies have fallen further, some have not fallen not fallen as much. But this is another unique aspect of the Hindenburg research, the Adani group vis-a-vis its implications after the Hindenburg research. Dr. Arun Kumar has joined us. Would you like him to complete his presentation before I speak, or should I just continue?
Sir, since you started, I think you can go and complete yours, and then Professor can
all right. So as I mentioned earlier, the difference between crony capitalism and oligarchy. That's point number one. The second is, compared to other industrial conglomerates and business conglomerates, we haven't seen such a spectacular rise and an even more spectacular fall in the prices of the shares of this group. That was point number two. Point number three, whether you look at the Reliance group, whether you look at the Tatas, look at the Birlas and several other corporate groups, many of them have been very widely diversified. But I would argue that no corporate group has been as widely diversified as the Adani group. Professor Arun Kumar mentioned some of these. Many of them are in the infrastructure sector. And many of these places, they are in monopoly positions, often, close to where the largest public sector organizations are. For instance, the biggest seaport in India is Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust. But the biggest container shipping port is Mundra, which is operated by the Adani Group. The Adani Group is also, when you look at it, not that special economic zone is the biggest in the country. It has a chain of jewels I'm sort of reminiscing about the China's, used to call them the string of pearls, the seaports that China controls from the Horn of Africa to the South China Sea. And if you look, it's truly amazing. There are 14 ports. And these are all run and controlled by the Adani Group. Look at airports. As Dr. Arun Kumar has already mentioned, they are one of the biggest, might soon become the biggest airport operator in this country. They have no experience in this area. We can debate and discuss whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but these are facts. The second point is the circumstances under which the Adani Group managed to acquire operational control over the second largest airport in India, that's the Mumbai airport, was also amazing. You saw what had happened to the GVK Group earlier. They were faced with several lawsuits, income tax cases, serious fraud investigation office, lots and lots of action. And then they sold out to the Adanis. Let's look at power generation. Adani Group is the biggest in the private sector, but it is number 2 after the public sector National Thermal Power Corporation, that's NTPC. Again, this is quite amazing. So he's the biggest importer of coal. He has mines that are being operated in Australia, in Indonesia. He tried to set up a mine in Myanmar. He didn't succeed. And then we can go on. He has some very controversial projects in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. Under controversial circumstances, he's got money from a Russian bank. He has very controversial relations with a Chinese national based in Taipei, in Taiwan, who has been engaged in several projects of the Adani Group. And one of the family members have was sanctioned by the United Nations Security Council for trading with North Korea. Okay, let me go on. It's not just that. City gas, biggest solar power. So he doesn't want you to know that he's a big advocate or he's a big fan of big coal, but he's also the biggest player in solar and renewables. And the point that I just want to highlight is that he's moved beyond that. Cement. Overnight, he acquired Holcim and became the second largest producer of cement. He's the biggest supplier of apples. He's the biggest distributor of edible oils, the Fortune brand. So it goes not only into the infrastructure, but beyond the infrastructure, into fast-moving consumer goods, big players in real estate, and as Professor Arun Kumar pointed out, defense equipment, from drones or unmanned aerial vehicles to small arms, and several questions are being raised about the circumstances which led to the Adani Group acquiring so much. And scandals pertaining to the Adani Group are not new. During the Ketan Mehta scandal, his companies, the trading in their shares was banned. Justice Santosh Hegde, who was the ombudsman, the Lokayukta of the Karnataka government, mentioned Adani Group as among those who were allegedly involved in illegally exporting iron ore from Ballari in Karnataka and Anantapur in Andhra Pradesh. There are several scandals involving him and allegations. So let's again look at what Hindenburg happened. And if you look at the 32,000-word report of Hindenburg, you will find that well over half that information is already in the public domain, including articles written by me, people I work with, show cause notices issued by the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence that have been made public, not today, several years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. But, and this is the but, no action was taken. As Professor Kumar said, SEBI seemed to be sleeping. The Reserve Bank of India had nothing to say. So the point is, here is a man who, going by the same set of yardsticks, that is, the their market capitalization. He was in 2014, Mr. Gautam Adani was the 609th richest person. And then in 2022, he became the second richest person. At the time the Hindenburg report was put out, it was the third richest. So these are important facts that we have to keep in mind. Furthermore, let me also talk a little bit about the follow-on public offer, which Professor Arun Kumar talked about. Now, how is it that it was first subscribed to and then they returned the money? I raise a question, is there any truth in the allegations raised by the spokesperson and the member of parliament belonging to the Congress party, Mr. Jairam Ramesh? He has alleged that several high net worth individuals, including Sunil Bharti Mittal, Sajjan Jindal, the older Ambani brother, Mukesh Ambani, several others, they put their money in. Why? First, as Professor Arun Kumar said, why would they put their money into a company, its shares, when the price is lower in the market? Secondly, why did they withdraw? And Mr. On the day of the budget at 10:40 p.m. at night, when Mr. Gautam Adani says there's volatility in the stock market and I'm morally obliged to return it, I don't know how many people bought his views or his thoughts or his ideas, because after that, the prices of the stocks kept collapsing. So, to summarize the point, here you have a situation where the regulatory authorities look the other way. Let's move on further, and where do we go from here? Just because the Lok Sabha speaker has censored Rahul Gandhi's speech 18 times, people have already heard it. People have already watched it. It's a bit like that BBC documentary. Now, you want to tell people to watch? I mean, are you trying to wanting people to watch that or watch Rahul Gandhi's speech or the BBC documentary more by banning it or censoring it? So this is when I think the government's acts also indicate a certain amount of nervousness, if not downright stupidity, in the way in which they have reacted to what happened when the Hindenburg report came out. You know, me and my colleagues are writing a book. I mean, I can give you dozens of examples. I talked about Bangladesh. Let me, since time is limited and it's already 5:45, let me give you 2 or 3 examples. Bangladesh Godda. Nowhere in the world do you have a project where the coal is imported from Indonesia and Australia, brought to India by ship to Odisha, and then sent by rail to Godda in Jharkhand, from where it is exported 100% of that electricity to Bangladesh. Now, you look at the background, the way the land was acquired. There was so much opposition, including by the Adivasis of that area. See how the rules were changed pertaining to special economic zones. All of this was done when the BJP chief minister of Jharkhand, Raghuvar Das, was the chief minister. There was a huge amount of opposition. It was just brushed aside. After the project went through, Ravi Nair, with whom I work, he's another independent journalist. He said that he and another person, he closely scrutinized the power purchase agreement, and he came to the conclusion that Bangladesh was going to pay 3 times the amount of electricity than it should be. So I can go on and look at what happened in Sri Lanka. First, you have a project given to them. And people are saying, you know, these are government to government projects. And then we have people actually saying, no, you can say it's a government to government project, but we have been told to give it to A or B or C, in this case, Adani. We had the former head of the Ceylon Electricity Board who was saying that, you know, he was told by the then president, Rajapaksa. Now, Rajapaksa denies it. This gentleman then says, I was emotional, I couldn't do it. See what happened in Bangladesh. A former head of the Bangladesh Power Development Corporation said that, you know, how can Sheikh Hasina say no to Modi's friend? I mean, it's a formal interview. He has been named. given in the Washington Post. Okay, so I'm not going to speak for very long. If you have some questions, I'll be happy to answer. The last point I wanted to make, a lot has been made about the Adani Group's entry into the media and its acquisition of NDTV. I speak from my own personal experience a little bit. If you can just give me a few minutes. I'm the only citizen of India against whom lawyers representing corporate entities that are part of the Adani Group have sued me for 6 cases of defamation. And these cases are pending there are five in Gujarat and there's one in Rajasthan. There is a longer story, but I won't. I had to lose my job, actually. Circumstances were such that I had to resign my position as the editor of the Economic and Political Weekly. And the principal reason for it was a report on the Adani Group. I'm talking about 2017, June. Also, I happen to be the only journalist who has been named in the Hindenburg research report. Now, the response they gave, what do I have to say to that? I decided to break my silence. 2 of these cases have gag orders against me. I decided to break my silence because a whole lot of misinformation was being put out. It was, the question out of the 88 questions that were asked in the Hindenburg research report, question number 84 said, why is Mr. Adani targeting, or not targeting, the word is, why is he trying to arrest a critical journalist? I was named there. Now, this is how it's happening. A non-bailable warrant of arrest was issued against me in January 2021. I appeared in court. What was the allegation? That I didn't appear in court. My lawyer argued against it. I won the case in the higher court. I appeared in court not once, not twice. But since March 2021, I've heard nothing about this case. So I could go on and tell you more, but I'll stop here to tell you that what is happening as far as the Adani Group is concerned will have major implications for the future of India's politics and its economics, its polity and its economy. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much for your time. I'd like to thank you first. And you made amazing points. Before we go to question answers, I would allow Mr. Arun Kumar to go finish his slides. It was unfortunate that there was connection issues. I'm not sure if it's from our side or I don't know from where, but I think if you can finish his slides, if there are anything left, and then we can go for Q&A. Sorry, you're not audible.
Acha. Okay.
Yeah, now you're audible, yes.
All right. So I was saying that, the impact on the economy is going to be quite substantial, whether it be LIC, whether it be the public sector banks like State Bank of India who have done it. And that will actually bring a bad name to the Indian markets. There'll also be the problem that inflow of foreign capital will slow down. And this is precisely when the current account deficit in the country is quite high and capital flows are needed. Reserves have been declining, rupee has been falling. So this will put a bad on the Indian economy. The MSCI and the Moody's have downgraded the Adani companies. Total of France has postponed its venture. And there are many Adani projects that have been postponed. Now, because Adani was supposed to be a big investor, if that happens, then the investment in the economy will slow down, and that will slow down the growth of the economy. So what is the government strategy? Government strategy is, as far as I can tell, a twin strategy. On the one hand, give a lot of assets and funds to the chaeballs, like the big businesses, which are like chaeballs, which I said earlier. It also to withdraw state from the public sector undertakings and hand them the projects over to the big businesses. So the demand is shifting to the organized sector. And that has been happening since the time of demonetization, GST. the digitization and formalization, sudden lockdown. And that's damaging the unorganized sector, which is the unorganized sector that gives most of the employment. And that's why the problem of unemployment has been increasing. And what I argue is that this has invisibilized the unorganized sector, both in data and policy. So it's like colonizing the unorganized sector. So the organized sector, these big conglomerates, they are colonizing the unorganized sector. And the unorganized sector, as a result, is suffering. And therefore, the economy is slowing down. And that's what actually the problem today is. So it's politically expedient to keep the people in poverty and keep giving them some sops at the time of elections, so that the ruling party can keep pretending to be pro-poor. But actually what they're doing is they're giving to the organized sector, the unorganized sector is losing. But for the unorganized sector, the losses are hypothetical, whereas currently what they're getting, that's what is in their hand. So therefore, this is the strategy that the political party, the ruling party is using to be able to get the votes from the poor people. The poor people don't understand that they have been losing about 10 lakh crores per annum since the time of demonetization. So in the last 7 years, they've lost about 70 lakh crores, whereas what they're getting is only 3 to 4 lakh crores. So they've gained about 22 lakh crores. But to them, the losses are hypothetical. So this is the political strategy. But I feel that this political strategy is now seeing its failure. So to conclude, there are many questions that need answering, even if the Hindenburg report is discounted. And I think Paranjoy has very ably put that in his presentation. The dubious role of cronyism and international finance architecture that enables the rich to manipulate the financial systems, that needs to be investigated. And the Supreme Court inquiry cannot investigate that. And that's why a wider strategy, a full strategy is required. Now, what happened with respect to Adani's growth and collapse is very bad for the economy, as I was trying to suggest. And if that is bad for the economy, then the government's twin strategy is failing. And that will have serious implications for the politics and for the economy in the coming times. So full inquiry is what is required to decipher the Adani episode. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much for your time. And I think now I open the floor for questions. We'll just take questions for 10 minutes and then we'll end the show. First, I request Kubal Gandhi. He had already messaged me that he has a very interesting question. So I let him go with his questions and then I'll ask mine. And then if there are any questions from the participants, you can just raise your hand or type in your question. I'll just call you to speak. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Dharani?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah, my question is to both Professor Arun Kumar and Paranjoy. As Mr. Paranjoy rightly said, this is not one of the first scam in this country or even internationally. Internationally, when we see this round tripping, the concept of round tripping and inflating the share prices has been there for a very, very, very long time. For example, even from the days of Enron to say the Wirecard in Germany, one MDB scandal in Malaysia. This is a standard practice which is used by international corporations using basically the tax havens and also the tax incentive schemes, which is like the special economic zones, the software technology parks of India, biotechnology parks here, where tax exemptions are given locally. So the whole methodology is to inflate the share price and round trip the fund so that the price of the shares will exponentially go higher. But as far as Adani is concerned, there is an intrinsic connection between a political party, a government, and a corporation, where this particular entity, Adani, may be the front end of this particular political party. Actually, they may not have anything. But why is it that the international community, though G20 countries or FATF is coming up with certain regulations to regulate these type of corporate frauds, why is it that international community is not effectively monitoring the mechanism? Because it cannot happen in one single country, because it is an international corporate fraud. So in such a case, the United Nations or maybe the business organizations have to come up. Otherwise, what happens is even the democracies are becoming fragile. So, for example, the money from Africa, particularly, for example, the blood money in the sale of diamonds or by selling gold or commodities, these are all routed back to the system as legally earned income. So this particular concept of round tripping is the main reason for the collapse of many countries, and also for various human rights violations, various internal armed conflicts, various abuses relating to child soldiers, etc., etc. Why international community is not coming up, and what is the solution for this particular internationally? Thank you.
So you can go ahead with your reply. Whoever wants to answer, just go ahead and answer. Or if both of you want to answer, you can just go one after one.
Okay, as far as I can tell, there are 90 tax havens in the world, and many of the tax havens are linked to, sorry, 1 minute. Many of the tax havens are linked to the advanced countries, like Delaware in USA is a tax haven. The UK has large number of entities under its control, which are tax havens. So in a sense, the advanced countries themselves are not very keen to, investigate these tax havens and to do things. Switzerland, as one of the most advanced country, used to be having bank secrecy. Solely under pressure that they have reduced the bank secrecy, but that does not mean that they're not doing other things to enable this round tripping to take place. So, as one of the authors had written earlier, that during the colonial period, the funds from the colonies used to go into the advanced countries. And as the colonies became more independent, then the tax havens have been used to siphon funds out of the developing country into the advanced countries. So otherwise, you see, FATF and the G20 and so on should apply pressure to stop the tax havens from the secrecy and from the low tax rates that are there. So I think what I call the international financial architecture, the international financial architecture is controlled by the rich countries, and they are the ones who are benefiting out of them. And that's why I think this round tripping, etc., is not being stopped by them.
If I can add to what Dr. Arun Kumar has said, there is increasing pressure, and even some of the OECD countries, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, they have an initiative called BEPS, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting. They want a more transparent regime because they have realized that it's hurting the economies of even these developed countries. But the question would be, to what extent will they go? And what extent will they go to oppose oligarchs whose links with ruling political personalities is rather well known and well publicized? I mean, I don't need to tell you that Mr. Narendra Modi was proud when he took the aircraft across the country when he campaigned for elections in the run-up to the 2014 Lok Sabha elections. And we saw pictures of him next to his aircraft, Mr. Adani's aircraft. So I will be arguing that after what has happened, remember Hindenburg is an American company, after what has happened in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Australia, the links with Russia, the links with the Chinese national based in Taiwan, and several other things, there could be greater international scrutiny. To what extent this will be countered, or the present regime will be able to, counter these questions, remains to be seen. But I do believe it's a defining time. It's a defining period in the contemporary history and the political economy of India.
I have a sub-question, Dharani. I'll just ask.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Particularly how it affects the confidence of Indian industry abroad, because I'm basically a corporate lawyer specializing in international cross-border mergers and acquisitions. I also wrote an article in this regard regarding Adani in the Wire. Coming from a place that is from the south, where the software industry is robust here, the export of software cannot be identified. And the scam funds or the blood money or even the terror funds can be routed into the system in the form of export of consideration for export of software, because one software export is not tangible. It cannot be identified. Here, where the problem is, when we see the balance sheet of the companies, some companies, particularly the SaaS companies or fintech, when in the balance sheet, their profit margin will be very, very less. Say, for example, roughly 75 crores are not profit margin. I'm talking about even the revenue. Claiming an exorbitant amount of valuation, maybe 20 times or 30 times of their revenue. This particular thing is happening here. And also, when the product is valued, when the companies like SaaS companies go to US and get it listed in the NASDAQ under the reverse merger system, that is the SPAC model, enormous. So some companies are quoting they are getting a market cap of 1 lakh crores. But when we see the balance sheet or when we see the financials, it will not justify these type of things. So if Adani's case is proved, or even today, how the international markets will see that the companies coming from India, particularly the IT industry or even the export industry, is really having that particular substance? Won't it affect the confidence of the Indian industry per se?
I will suggest that it has already affected. This is not a question about what will happen in the future. I believe it has already happened. I believe it's had a huge impact. And Professor Arun Kumar has already pointed out the impact on the economy. Several projects, infrastructure projects, there's a big question mark on them. Cement, coal to plastics project. He mentioned about Total Energies withdrawing from the hydrogen project. There are dozens of examples, a power project. All of these, their future, there are big question marks on them. So many of these are having financial support from those outside India. How much of it is genuine, how much of it is not, is another question. But I would say it's already had a major impact.
Particularly now, when an Indian company is going for international stock markets, it will be scrutinized multiple times, whether they are having enough valuation or not. That is a problem Adani has created for the other companies in India.
You are completely correct.
Thank you. That's it, my question. Dhanani, please go ahead with other questions.
I don't see anyone asking questions, but if they still have questions, they can raise their hands. And before that, I'll proceed with my question. So that is, if you look at foreign institutional investors, they've left Indian market in the last couple of years. If you look, the amount of money that's pulled out is about 1.6 lakhs in 1 year. That is from 2022 January until December 2022, which is highest ever in history of India. Apart from maybe 2008 crisis, when it was even half of that, but just half of that, 80,000 crores or something. So do you think this has something to do with the regulatory problems here? Because the money started leaving even before Adani scam, but do you think the foreign institutional investors have somehow realized that the institutions are working arbitrary here, so on and so forth? What was the reason for the FIIs to leave India?
What I see is that this has been happening because the interest rates have been going up in the US, and therefore these companies feel that they can get a better return given the risk of depreciation of the rupee. And the depreciation of the rupee is also linked to the poor investment climate in the Indian economy. So there is an interlinkage between the interest rate rise, the declining investment climate, and the very high P ratio that has been prevailing in the Indian stock market. The high P ratio means that the Indian stocks are expensive. So therefore, companies selling out and moving out. And Adani has proved that the P ratios can be manipulated to be artificially high. And therefore, the confidence in the Indian stock market also is deteriorated. So there are several reasons why it started even before the Adani scam came up. But the Adani scam proves that, what is the reason why, foreign companies have been losing confidence and moving out of the Indian context.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Saravana from Leeds, Kasinathan from Canada, and
Yeah,
Professor
that's
Segareddy
all
from
right.
Oxford. Yeah, please. Yeah. Call them.
Hi, Tony, are you able to hear me?
Okay. Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Okay, I've got a question to both Paranjoy and Dr. Arun Kumar, a slightly philosophical question. Do you both think what is currently wrong with India can be corrected by what is right with India? Or have you lost hope in the idea of India itself?
Paranjoy, you want to go for?
We need a separate discussion for this. You can't expect either me or Professor Arun Kumar to give you a clever one-line answer saying, yes, good, bad, indifferent. No, it's a very, very important question you've raised. To discuss India's polity, to discuss India's economy, we need a longer discussion. So pardon my, Mr. Rajasekhar, pardon me not answering your question, because it's not a simple question to answer. It will take me at least half an hour to even begin.
But Paranjoy, I think what we've been discussing till now, the investment climate has deteriorated. The unorganized sector is being very badly hit. And unorganized sector employs 94% of the workforce. And if they are being hit, that leads to larger unemployment, also to much worse distribution in the economy. And as the distribution deteriorates, the rate of growth falls. And you could see that even before the pandemic, the rate of growth for 8 quarters had successively dropped from 8% to 3.1%. So that trend is going to continue. And the Indian economy's data is incorrect because the Indian economy's GDP data does not include the unorganized sector independently. It assumes that the unorganized sector is growing at the same rate as the organized sector. But if you independently calculate the unorganized sector, then the Indian economy's rate of growth is not 6 or 7%, but minus 1% at the moment, because the unorganized sector is being hurt very badly by the growth. And you can see that in various sectors, like for instance, the trade sector where e-commerce is growing at 30-40%, the local traders, they are declining. You see it in the FMCG sector, in the textile sector, in the leather goods sector, in the pressure cooker industry sector. So a variety of sectors are showing this trend where the organized sector is growing at the expense of the unorganized sector. And that doesn't get captured in the data. So in other words, the economy is in a sharp decline, and therefore the economic prospects are bad. The question is, what about the politics? And that's why I tried to present that the ruling party's twin strategy is, on the one hand, to promote the chai balls, on the other hand, make the poor, keep the poor and make them recipients of largesse from the government at the time of elections to try and get the vote. Now, this strategy is falling apart, with the chai balls not being able to be successful in terms of giving higher growth, etc. So I think this political strategy also has to change. So these are some of the things that, one has to think through, and how much impact it will have politically, that we have to see. But social impact is already there with the poor people suffering.
To add to what Professor Arun Kumar says, it is clear the impact on the economy. Impact on society is also very clear. What the impact would be on Indian politics is not an easy question to answer, because you still have almost 1 year before the next general elections. Several states will be going to the elections. So, these are difficult questions, and we've seen how Mr. Narendra Modi has been able to overcome several crises, whether it be the land acquisition bill, whether it be demonetization, whether it be the CAA, NRC, whether it be the Rafale scandal, whether it be a whole lot of other things, including the farmers' agitation. So we'll have to wait and watch what happens. How does he deal with this crisis?
So yes, so we have a couple more questions. I think I'll take both the questions together. So one question is from Segareddy from the Oxford Brookes University, and other is from Pari Kasinathan from Canada. So both of you can go ahead with your questions, and then after the questions, I think you can answer them both together.
Can I go first? please?
Yes, yes, sir. Please go first. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for to the panel, and thank you for all the people who organized it. I just have a couple of quick questions. Firstly, we can appreciate the activity of the international financial agents, and it is not totally clear to me who the beneficiaries are of this current series of actions. But what I would like to know is, we can learn how the Indian financial system, the political system can learn to remedy this for the longer term. Being a player in the international financial centers.
My view is that the problems are at home, and it is up to the government in New Delhi to try and figure out what happens when there's not a level playing field. What happens when your faith in regulatory authorities diminish or get completely destroyed? So these are, important questions. I believe that unless we can get our own act together at home, however much we try, the rest of the world will ignore everything.
So can I just please press on this a little bit further, to that, and that's absolutely the question, and what I really like to know is your answer to this. Yeah. So if you had the Prime Minister this year tomorrow, what would you tell him? Please do 1, 2, and 3.
He won't listen to me even if I meet him.
Beside the point.
Assuming that he would listen to you.
No, I don't think he listens to. He doesn't.
Beside the point, you are the man at the thing. You have already looked.
No, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
There's that much that one man can do, and even if we see power concentrated in the hands of one person.
Paranjoy, please let me stop you there. Yeah, please let me stop you there. It's not about him. It's not about him listening to this. What's your solution? What can this? Because you have the insight to all of this, and you looked at it very carefully, and so there must be in your thoughts, if only these things can be done, whether the Prime Minister is listening to it, the Finance Minister, or whoever. Yeah.
I don't have the answer to that.
Sure. That's good. Yeah.
Maybe Professor Arun Kumar can comment.
Yeah, sure.
Some, what is it that I would want to do? What I would do is, try and move towards creating full employment in the economy. Now, some people may say that that's not feasible, but I think, it's feasible in the Indian context, provided the political will exists and we are willing to change the development paradigm within which we are operating. So we have, as I said, the twin strategy is a top-down approach, where if you look at the budget, for instance, for this year, you find that because the fiscal deficit was rising, what all did they cut? They cut all the expenses where investment would have gone to the poor people for labor intensive, and increased investment and increased expenditure on all the capital intensive items, So this is the top-down approach, because of which the unemployment situation will worsen. So the rural employment guarantee scheme and the rural development schemes all were cut. What was increased was, a very highly capital intensive road construction, railway construction, etc., which offers very few jobs. So I would go towards a more full employment policy, especially vis-a-vis the micro sector, because micro sector employs 97.5% of the MSME employment. They are very small units. There are 60 million units compared to 6,000 large units. So these 60 million units are the ones that give most of the employment in the non-agriculture sector. So I would make them buoyant. How do I make them buoyant? I would go for 3 things that are missing as far as they are concerned. First is that I would split up the MSME ministry into micro separate and small and medium separate, because the micro units are 60 million, whereas small and medium are only 600,000. And most of the benefits of the policies of MSME go to the medium sector, not to the small and not to the micro sector. So that's the first thing. Second is GST has been disastrous for the micro and the small sector. I would make GST into a last point tax. because the input credit doesn't become available to the small and the micro sector, they have been losing market share. And there are any number of reports from the textile sector, from the leather goods sector, from the luggage industry, from the pressure cooker industry, etc., where demand is shifted as a result to the large industry away from the small and the micro sector. The third thing that I would do is I would create cooperatives among the micro sector and enable them to get finance and technology and marketing. That has to be done at a centralized level. Then they'll become more dynamic, and then the employment generation will increase. Then the next thing that is required very importantly is to generate non-farm employment in the rural areas, so that the excess of labor in the rural areas from farming shift to the non-farm employment. And again, for the non-farm employment, the micro sector, the one that would be very important, the small and the micro sector. So these are some of the things that I would propose and I'd go for if I had any chance to do that.
I completely endorse what Professor Arun Kumar said. I'm with him 100%.
So yeah, thank you very much.
So thank you. I think there's one more gentleman. With that, we'll end the event.
Yeah, just before you go there, I just want to a couple of conclusive remarks, if I can. Thank you very much to the two answers to my question. The takeaway for me from this, the connection with the international players, the financial centers, the journalists, report agencies, and all of those connections. Now, with this seminar has unveiled a lot of those and the play between them. So that was very, very useful. And the two pointed answers to my question, was very useful. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your question. So if Hari Kasinathan has his question, then you can go ahead. With that, we should end the event.
Thank you very much. It was very enlightening. I live in Canada, but I also try to do business in India, especially the SPAC companies. And this has put a clink, I would say, but every journey has its own bumps. And this I would consider is one of the bumps of Adani's problem. But to be on the positive side of it, it will take some more time. But the question is, a lot of Indian companies are reluctant to go to make SPAC deals because of Adani's problem. So probably that will only time can change that. I just wanted to give my input. Thank you very much. It was a great thing to listen to all you gentlemen, and have a great day. Did you get it? Or?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Did you get me? Were you able to get me?
Yes. We heard.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
I was only trying to get the attention of the organizers that in case there are no further questions.
Yes, sir. I think Dharani is dropped out. Dharani, are you there? Dharani?
I don't think he's there.
Yeah, he just called me, so I think he's having some connection issues. So
Okay, sir. So we'll close it up, sir.
Close it.
So we can many thanks to Professor Arun Kumar and Mr. Paranjoy Guha for such a wonderful presentation and a very insightful discussion on this Adani issue. This Adani issue has casted a clear doubt and also clear issues on the confidence with respect to not only with respect to Indian economy, but also with respect to Indian Inc. And more particularly because of rightly pointed out by Professor Arun Kumar in the beginning that capitalism cannot exist with cronyism. And this cronyism, unless we have a proper regulation in place, this issues cannot be solved. With this, I would like to thank the panelists and also the participants for spending their time and making this a wonderful event. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
All the best. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.